Yeah, 5 years ago, I applied for and got a grant that was about a project that would send me to Montana, to a small town where I would study veterans' families and veterans' lives and look at the spouses and children of those people. And then from that is where the idea for Mickey and the Bear came from. I felt like trauma, addiction, and the rehabilitation of veterans was something we only see through the veteran's eyes and not necessarily through the child or spouse's eyes. And so I guess the research was really important to me because that particular thing was not something from my real life. So I wanted to spend as much time as I could crafting a story that felt very honest to the community out there.
First of all, Annabelle wrote a beautiful script. So you have this template, you have these ideas that you need to kind of dive into, and it gives you a pathway. And this film about this 18-year-old girl, it's really her film. It's this coming-of-age tale. And Hank will kind of dip in and out of her life in this storyline and affect her and push her in different ways. And I mean, if you know, I've been around for a little bit, and if people know me, they know who I've worked with over the years, and I've worked with a lot of people in the military. I've done a lot of different jobs, and I just felt like I had something personal to say based upon the personal experiences I've had and my friends and the people I've worked with over the last, really the last 11, 12 years.
Both of them were such gifts to get to work with. With Bad, the real story is I used to work for our casting director throughout college, and it was the most, it was such an incredible way into learning who the New York actors were. And Bad was someone that she constantly wanted to cast and constantly did cast, so I got really familiar with his work. And he was always someone that I envisioned in the part. And then I remember I was like, haphazardly YouTubing videos of people, and I saw your scene in Flight where you were. Did we ever talk about this?
I don't think we did.
The cancer patient scene.
Yeah.
And I was like, literally, like that moment, I was like, this is Hank. Because it's the most tragic, it's such a tragic figure, but there's such levity there, and there's a flirtatiousness there, and there's a pride there. And that was something, that's such a hard thing to do. Like, to be able, a lot of actors come in with such ego, and they're like, I just want to cry and yell. And Badge is able to have that, like, darkness buried, but then have that levity and that, like, lightness and the humor there, too. And I remember I was like, this is our guy. And then I was so fortunate to get to meet him, and we connected.
Annie and I got along very well right away. I think she's a writer beyond her years, and there was something I saw, and I think we just had this kind of instant understanding and connection of what the story is and what the tone would be. But I just got to say, the moment it was for me, Annie did this short film called Frankie Keeps Talking.
Yep.
And everyone should see this. Annie wrote it, directed, and stars in it, and it was just one of those cool little movies that you go, I don't know what she's doing next, but I want to be a part of it because she's talented, and you want to work with people who are doing something different and doing something risky. It's a really complicated and interesting dynamic. You know what I mean? When you lose, Mickey loses her mother, Hank has lost his wife. You know, what is this dynamic of two people living together? You know, and where do they fall? And those lines get blurred between who is really the parent. You know, and there's almost more of a best friend kind of element that's dipping in there also. It's it can be complicated, but we know what the actual element really is, and so what happens in those moments where it shifts back to what is the true father-daughter relationship. But this man has kind of unfortunately eroded that and destroyed that over time.
It really is. For the three of us, Badge, Cammy, and myself, it was so much about the love that was there. It was not, we didn't want to play how fraught and charged the relationship was because this third person, which was Hank's wife and Mickey's mother, was now absent. We wanted to play like the fact that these people only have each other, which makes, the darker moments all the more tragic, I would say.
And the darker moments are coming. no matter what. You know what I mean? You have this piece of paper, like it's been written. There is no other outcome here. We know how this ends.
Yeah.
So we would just keep playing with keeping it light and hopeful, and then letting the circumstances and the dialogue go where it inevitably goes.
Yeah, because that's, for me, human. Like, we don't, well, some people go around, like, really facing tragedy constantly, but it's like, I think a lot of people, as a coping mechanism, look toward, tomorrow's a new day. And I think that was really important to counterbalance the dark places the movie inevitably goes.
Yeah.
Well, that's what's kind of fascinating, too, is that we rehearsed a ton, and there were lots of conversations, but I actually didn't need to do a lot of work in terms of building a rapport. And I sort of had an instinct when I cast Cammy opposite Badge that they would, I was like, something tells me that they're going to get along, because they both have a fearlessness to their acting and kind of a scrappiness, and like, I'll go wherever you want to go. Like, if you're going to go there, I'll, like, go 10 times further than you. And so when they got in a room together, they were both so committed to just going there in terms of the intimacy, going there in terms of the closeness, and in terms of the ball busting between these characters. And, of course, it's a very crafted performance, but I would say from the get-go, it felt really organic.
The moment Cammy and I met, listen, she is such a fierce actress, and she does so much preparation and homework. And what Annie was saying, she's game. She comes in and she's just like, here I am, I'm ready to go, and this is why, and who are you? And it was just, from day one, we were just like, okay, we're good, it's on. And we did a lot of rehearsal. We tried to go out to dinner together, went to rodeos together. It was kind of like, and that's important. And let's talk about, we don't need to talk about the script and the story all the time. Yeah. Let's talk about those other things, those little personal things. What is your life like? What do you remember about this? What is this? What kind of clothes do you like to wear? All this stuff matters and it informs you. And she's, Cammy's tireless too, Like there's hour one of the, we work hard. We work long days. You make an independent film, man. It's like we're doing it together, man, and this whole crew, and Cammy at hour 1's the same Cammy at hour 13, and and
she's totally she's totally present.
Yeah.
And you are too. That was another thing too, is like we had a complete commitment from both.
Yeah, we had a great crew. Yeah. Like it's just a lovely. I mean, most of our crew, we had local Montana, and then we brought in some people from New York, and it just was. There's some movies you do, there's some jobs you work that it just feels like, oh man, we might be catching lightning in a bottle here, and where everyone gives into the story. You know what I mean? The director, the actors, the DP, the grip and electric department. Like, I'm serious, man. Where everyone's just like, I'm so excited to be here today, and proud of what we're making.
I started writing this 5 years ago now, and that the issue of, I guess, opioids and especially the pushing of those pills onto veterans specifically was something prevalent even then, and now it's all the more prevalent. And I think something for me that was important in the discussion of a veteran's family was the way that pill dependency could affect the child. That's something that I just don't see. I wasn't super familiar with, but I understood the feeling of kind of being on the other side of the door when someone you're very close to is really suffering and you just want to help, but you don't know how. And so for Mickey, that was the perspective I could relate to. And I wanted to root it in that person on the other side of the wall. It's not a very overt critique of the way these pills are pushed onto veterans, but it is a very subtle critique, I would say. And it's utterly wrong. It's capitalism at its finest, of preying upon people that really are in need. And I think part of what was really fascinating about Hank is you can't entirely fault him for sometimes stepping over the line with his daughter, because he is a product of the way this country treats its veterans, which is generally quite poorly.
Like Annie said, the opioids, there's a lot of elements here in the healthcare system that they're secondary storylines here. You know, the main storyline that you have to lean into is the the relationship, and so as an actor, you approach from that direction. I don't like to talk about my preparation. I don't like to talk about what is personal and what is ripped from other people. You know what I mean? So, but the opioid addiction, the crisis in this country, which thank God now a lot of these companies are going through these lawsuits and are being held accountable for what they've done, because it's straight up like schoolyard drug dealing. You know what these guys have done over the last 15 years, like they know it. So don't act like I'm talking out of school by calling them out. You know what I mean? You know, if anything that we can do to bring that into the forefront a little more, you know, I'd appreciate that. And you know, this film does have a lot of elements in there that I think it's important to do veteran outreach, and it's important for all of us to talk about these things. Mental illness is something that we need to talk about. You know, I mean, the opioid addiction, drug and alcohol addiction. You know, these are all things that really, for all of our health and benefit, but especially for people who have had PTSD or traumatic brain injuries. I mean, we're getting into the world of CTE here stuff, which it's touched me in a personal way of my friends and my family, and I know what it's like to be in a dark room. You know what I mean? And you gotta get out of it somehow, man. So the conversation and bringing it out into the open is just really important.